Hello, everybody. Welcome to your very favorite Bronze Age Spider-Man podcast. Here comes the Spider-Cast. I am your co-host, Mike L., and as always, I'm joined by
Joshua Mervell. Today we're going to be looking at Spider-Man comics from October of 1983.
And to celebrate, we have a very special guest this week in the form of Kyle Van Doom, a.k.a. Kyle Van Dongen.
Hello. Glad to be here.
Now, we should point out Kyle was previously on an episode of Quasar Chronology, correct?
Yes, I don't remember what issue it was, the dinosaur one.
Was that the Godzilla episode?
No, it was where they traveled through time. It was like Land of the Lost.
Oh, right. Yes, of course. Now, I should point out there are Godzilla appearances in the Marvel Universe. However, I don't think any of them fall within this timeline for Spider-Man, so it's very unlikely that we'll ever be able to review them. Sorry.
Yeah, versus the Avengers. I think I have it, honestly, somewhere.
Yeah, I think I actually bought that for you. So before we go forward, Kyle, I want to ask, what is your knowledge of the Hobgoblin?
See, I did watch the cartoon from the 90s, and I remember the Hobgoblin being a reoccurring villain, but if you ask me what's the difference between him and the Green Goblin, I only know the Green Goblin is the original, and he's Norman Osborn, and I'm guessing the Hobgoblin is a copycat almost, or a successor?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, I guess I got it then.
Yeah, that's right. The original Green Goblin was Norman Osborn. Then when he died, his son Harry Osborn took over as Green Goblin. However, when Roger Stern began his run on Spider-Man in 1980, he decided instead of creating a fourth Green Goblin, he would just create a new Goblin-themed supervillain. So he created the Hobgoblin. And it goes from there.
Okay.
Okay, so let's start with Amazing Spider-Man number 245. Obviously on the cover, we've got Spider-Man unmasking the Hobgoblin. And let me tell you, this cover is incredible. What do you think of this, Josh?
Oh, it's fantastic. Both the cover and the first splash page are just really, really great.
Right, and I do want to point out that this issue is written by series regular Roger Stern and drawn by John Romita Jr. However, unlike previous issues, it's inked by Dave Simons, who we have come across previously, but I'm not overly familiar with his work. But I want to ask you, Josh, did you notice a difference in the art style this week compared to previous issues of Amazing Spider-Man?
Especially from last week, because last week it was very sketchy and it really stood out. I think this was more along the lines of what we're used to with like Jim Mooney and the likes. This felt more at home and comfortable reading Amazing Spider-Man. I really did like the inking in this one.
But here's the thing: is there are some really bad panels in this issue. Like, look at page 2. The shot of Spider-Man hanging from the ceiling, and then you look at the next panel. Like, what the hell is going on there?
Okay.
Like, the perspective is off, the motion lines are off, and there's no shadows on the wall. Like, I can't tell if Spider-Man's supposed to be sticking to the wall or if he's jumping.
Like, he's stuck to the wall, yeah.
And the perspective's kind of weird, too. Like, he looks very small, and the other guy, the DA's head looks very large.
I think the problem is that in order to be a good inker, you also have to be a good artist, right? Like, you have to understand shadow, depth, perspective, anatomy to some extent. And what I think happened in this issue is Dave Simons has kind of, he may have traced over the lines that John Romita Jr. drew, but he kind of just flattens it out. So to me, it makes it look kind of amateur. So in this issue, we start off with a great shot of Spider-Man standing outside of the window of this office. It's the district attorney's office. Now, the thing I love about this is, one of the cool things about, especially Marvel, that they used to do back in the old days, is the opening splash page would always have a shot of the heroes doing something with their powers so that you don't have to use exposition to explain what their powers are, right? So, for example, if it was the Fantastic Four, you'd have Mr. Fantastic stretching, and then you'd have the Thing holding up something gigantic, the Human Torch is flying with his flames on, and Invisible Woman is, doing something invisible. But in this case, we have Spider-Man hanging upside down, which he's done a million times. But in this story, it's standing up on the ceiling outside of a window, right? So if it was a regular guy, he'd be standing upright, but it's Spidey, so he's upside down. That's how we know what his powers are. It's great. So he's standing outside this window because he wants to get some information. Actually, sorry, he wants to convince the district attorney to help him investigate the break-ins that have been happening at the Osborne manufacturing buildings. And he's got to be careful because he can't reveal why it's important to him, and he can't reveal that there's a connection between Norman Osborn and the Green Goblin. So he tries to convince this guy, but he doesn't want to do it. So Spidey takes off. He's pissed off. So he's like, okay, whatever. I'm going to get out of here. So he leaves. So then we cut over to someone, we don't know who yet, mixing chemicals in the headquarters of a plush mansion on Long Island, okay? We don't know who it is yet. They're pouring chemicals together, and because it's a superhero comic from the 80s, we don't need explanation of what the chemicals are. The guy's just in his head thinking, according to the notes from Norman Osborn's journal, the power of the Green Goblin came from mixing these two compounds. Ah, it's turning green. That's the proper reaction. What happens next? Boom! Of course, this big explosion. Actually, whoom. Big explosion, chemicals all over his face. They're burning. Then someone else comes in the room. Hold on, I'm coming, and drags him out. Now, at this point, we're not really supposed to know who it is, but spoiler alert, that is supposed to be Roderick Kingsley coming in and dragging Lefty Donovan out of the room, okay, which we kind of figure out as we go along. Roderick Kingsley runs back into the building while Lefty Donovan's out on the lawn. Then the building explodes. Who's dead, who's alive, we don't know. Next thing you know, the paramedics show up, and we see that the person who was out on the front lawn has survived, but now their faces and hands are going to be covered in bandages, which we find out later is Lefty Donovan. So, Spider-Man, because he didn't get anywhere with the district attorney, goes to the Daily Bugle, and he's going to sneak into like a records room and go through their old cases and try to find out something about Lefty Donovan. So he goes into this little like filing cabinet room, and then somehow Betty Leeds materializes out of thin air. I don't understand how she does this, but whatever. So he has to kind of stop what he's doing. She convinces him to join her and Ned Leeds for dinner. And as they're leaving, they pass by J. Jonah Jameson. They go to this date, and sure enough, Mary Jane is there, which Peter Parker did not know was going to happen. Now, I want to ask you, Kyle, did it surprise you that Peter and Mary Jane were not a couple in this issue?
Well, I'm not versed on, the whole nature. I know there's various people he's been with, and we'll learn about that later on as well with another issue we're looking at today. So it's not a surprise that they're not together, really. I assume at some point they were together or will get together or both.
It doesn't really work for me when people are just thrown at Peter rather than like actual like conflicts happening. Because it's always just Peter like, oh, it's MJ. Oh, I like MJ. But wait, no, I like Black Cat. Like it doesn't like, I don't know. He just sees another woman and then he has trouble because he's like, oh, maybe I should be with MJ instead of Felicia.
Which, that's a very teenager thing. He's not a teenager anymore, is he?
Well,
no.
I mean, he's in college, so I think he's I think he's late teens at this point.
So he's getting a little old for that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I'm still in that phase, and I'm 44. But anyway, we'll get to that later. Okay. So anyway, so now, so we cut back to the guy in jail, or the guy in the hospital, and I actually love this scene because, again, this kind of reminds me of No Country for Old Men, where it's implied that he murders this orderly, but we don't show it. We just see the fact that he takes his clothes, and he thinks in his head, sorry, friend, but I'll need those clothes of yours. Then we cut to the next scene. He's got the clothes on, and then he's like, with any luck, that orderly won't be found for an hour or so. So they don't mince words. They're not saying he was, karate chopped on the back of the head and knocked out. He's dead, So
He could be unconscious.
I don't know.
I guess, he would be found. Well, he could be found still before he wakes up.
He could be found, but I think that they left it intentionally so you could get the idea that, it's easy to jump to the conclusion that he killed him.
Right, because otherwise I think the writer would have said, oh, he'll wake up in 10 minutes, or he'll wake up in an hour. But he said, no, he'll be found. So I just think it just shows how cold-blooded Hobgoblin is.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, sorry, Lefty Donovan. Actually, it's not even Hobgoblin. It's Lefty Donovan.
Yeah, I'm second guessing my understanding the story there for a second. I'm like, no, there's Lefty, right?
Yeah. It gets a little confusing, especially for me. But anyway, so Lefty, so he goes back to Sorry, but I just want to point out to any Windsor listeners not to be confused with Loathsome Lefty. But anyway, okay, so, and Josh and Kyle, you probably don't know who that is, so it doesn't matter.
Isn't that your buddy Tim Swadling?
No. Tim Swadling did a documentary about Lonesome Lefty.
Oh, they're friends, though. I know, that's all I know.
Friends. Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, so Lonesome Lefty Donovan. So he goes back to the destroyed house, whatever it was, and he goes back to the basement. He comes across the Hobgoblin stuff. He puts it all on. He powers up. And again, I think the reader is not really supposed to be sure who this is yet. Like, is it the Hobgoblin? Is it Lefty? We don't know. And so now, we get another cool scene. So now Spider-Man, he goes to find another cop that's going to help him out. So now this time it's Sergeant Lou Snyder. And so it's cool because, the guy kind of puts on an act like, you expect me to help you? No way. I happen to know that the DA already turned you down last month. It could cost me my badge if I were to let you see this file. Wink, wink, right?
It's this file. It's involved.
Yeah, right. And he's like, right. So I don't want anyone to catch you looking through that file. Understand? And he just walks out. He's like, I'm gonna go get something to eat. Yeah.
Got something in my eye or something.
Yeah. I love it. So then Spider-Man's looking through and he finds, according to this, so Lefty Donovan was being questioned the night I first fought the Hobgoblin. So then he couldn't be the Hobgoblin. So I'm confused. So then the guy comes back in and Spidey's like, okay, I got to get out of here. So, because we get a scene that is on number one on my list of superhero cliches I don't like, and that's where a supervillain just wreaks havoc in order to get the attention of the superhero. I really hate this, but I'll forgive it. It's fine. So Hobgoblin, or Lefty Donovan as Hobgoblin, is wreaking havoc, trying to get Spider-Man's attention. So Spider-Man comes out. There's a big fight scene. Spider-Man rescues a cop. And, again, because it's Roger Stern and John Romita Jr., it's not just chaos. It's actually like a choreographed fight scene, so it's pretty cool. And
I like that, actually, how you could tell what was happening every second of the way. Like, you could almost visualize this movie.
Yes.
It was, very well done from frame to frame, this particular scene.
So the efforts by the artist and the writer do not fall upon, deaf ears, I was going to say. But yeah, like you appreciate the work they put into this.
Yeah, I wrote my notes. Was it page 17? Yep, very clear action scenes I wrote right there.
Yes, well, John Romita Jr. is one of the masters for sure. And that's one of the things Josh and I have noticed is like whenever there's a fight scene, it's not just, BS. It's like the action's clear and there's a sequence, right, where you can follow, like first they do this, then they do that. Then the hero thinks of this idea and it's really
escalating.
Well done.
It's not just like mindless exchanging blows.
Right, exactly. I love this.
I was going to criticize this transition, though, how he goes to see, is it Snyder, right?
Yep.
And he learns Lefty probably isn't the Hobgoblin. And the very next scene, the Hobgoblin attacks, and he finds out it is Lefty, right?
Right.
And it's like, it seems like a weird narrative choice to me, to immediately,
It's
it's almost like Whiplash, but it's like, it doesn't really accomplish anything. Like, you're kind of just going along with, okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't make you think.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's kind of like there's really no good reason for one to follow the other kind of thing.
Yeah. Like, you maybe leave it hanging or something, or like build on the mystery. But like, I don't know how much I should be expecting from this story, but like,
sure.
Just the whole idea of this big mystery. It's like you don't want to play your cards too soon.
Yeah. Okay. Totally get you. Yep. That's a good point. So we'll get back to the fight. So they're fighting, and now Hobgoblin is throwing this. What is this? Like a garbage? Yeah, it's kind of like a garbage thing at him. It's another great. Yeah, kind of like a dumpster. He throws it at him. Spidey catches it. The Hobgoblin throws one of his pumpkin bombs. Spider-Man whips, catches it, throws it back. It explodes, knocks Hobgoblin over. And then he goes over and he tears off the mask. He's like, first, let's get rid of this mask. And what? I don't believe it. Even with the scars, I recognize your face from your pictures. You're Lefty Donovan. So yeah, this is weird because, I see what you're saying now. Because not only, so he just found out he's not Hobgoblin, but now he sees him dressed up as Hobgoblin. So it's kind of...
Right. I guess that's why I'm confused. Is because, like...
Yeah.
Then isn't he technically if he's wearing the costume, if he's wreaking havoc like Hobgoblin, if he's going to the police saying, I'm the Hobgoblin. I'm gonna face down Spider-Man and start like destroying things to lure him out. Is he not the Hobgoblin? Like it's just
Yeah.
And is he also not? Because at the beginning they show the mystery of who's in that lab. Is he not the guy with the test tubes? Because he's in the hospital the next scene. So the Hobgoblin's the guy who drags him out, right?
Okay, that's what's confusing.
like
This is what's confusing as hell. Just a second. Let's go back here, folks. For those listening at home, the guy who takes his bandages off is the guy that goes back to the house. Yes, that's Lefty Donovan. He's the one that puts on the costume. Now you're asking, who's the one that pulls out the bot?
No, who's the one that pulls Lefty out of the building and then runs back in before it explodes?
That's the actual Hobgoblin, is it not?
That is, yes, I believe that is Roderick Kingsley, because if you look at the way he's dressed, it matches the way Roderick Kingsley dressed when he first appeared in Spectacular Spider-Man with the purple outfit and the gray hair. So I think that was Roger Stern saying, okay, this is Roderick Kingsley. He pulls him out. But the weird thing is Roderick Kingsley goes back into the building and then it blows up.
To make you think he's dead, maybe.
What's that?
Maybe to make you think he's dead. But he's actually going to the basement, the lab in the basement, which hasn't been blown up because later you see Lefty Donovan approaching the wreckage of the house, but the basement's intact.
Look at this, Kyle. Doing a good job.
Yeah, thank you.
So yeah, that makes perfect sense, right? So it all works out. What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, no, that is fine. Again, I think it's just the fact that I guess it was his idea and plan to make Lefty Donovan seem like the Hobgoblin. Like he even gave him the strength serum and everything.
So let's be clear.
I mean?
Yeah, the best way to do the story is if the whole story would have happened and Spider-Man would have found out on the last page. Oh, wait a minute. No, Lefty Donovan was questioned at the same time as Hobgoblin was wreaking havoc the other time, so he can't be Hobgoblin. Because at least that would make this whole sequence more effective, right?
Yeah, we finally got him.
Right, I got him.
Right.
This is the Hobgoblin. I've unmasked him. Oh, shit. No, it can't be the Hobgoblin. You're right, because it's already been spoiled. So it's kind of like, now what? He's pulling off his mask. Wait a minute. The guy who I just found out is not the Hobgoblin is dressed up as the Hobgoblin? That's not much of a twist.
I think it's also so strange because they don't even reveal his face once Spider-Man knows that it's him.
Right.
Like, we don't ever actually see his face. It's still in shadows. And then the glider takes off and he explodes. So it's also kind of like, maybe I don't know. It was just, I guess, a little confusing. Well, I get it in like the bigger picture of things. It's just like, I don't know why it was done in this way, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Does it make you wonder if Roger Stern was, I mean, because for Kyle, you probably don't know this, but a lot of times what would happen is the writer and the artist would plot out the story together. The artist would draw the whole thing, and then the writer would add the dialogue and the narration later. So it's possible that Roger Stern
didn't even know.
Yeah, like maybe he wrote it. Maybe John Romita Jr. wrote it as if Spider-Man didn't know when he pulled the mask off. But then maybe when he was like, because if you look at the pictures, when he's looking through the papers, maybe he doesn't find out anything. Right? Maybe he just, I'll read this later, and he stuffs in his pocket or something. So it would have been better, you're right, to save the reveal for the end.
Well, the only reveal is that he mentions the boss, right? What boss? What's his name? Presumably Lefty. We assume it's Lefty.
Right.
So I guess that's your mystery, your breadcrumb.
Yeah, like maybe what could have happened is in the first scene, Spider-Man could have asked something, like asked that sergeant something, and then the very, very last page, the sergeant could be like, oh, by the way, that thing you asked about, it turns out that was Lefty Donovan who was questioned, and something. So that way it's like, oh shit, we thought we had the Hobgoblin, but we don't. That would have been a better way to do it. So that would be like a draft 2. Like if this was ever remade or made into a movie, that's something they could fix.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good point. So then, what's his name? Lefty Donovan escapes from Spider-Man's clutches and flies his goblin glider into a building, and it blows up, and now he's dead. And then we cut to a shot of the real Hobgoblin watching on a computer screen and basically talking about how, he's going to kill Spider-Man. And that's it, the end. So we just talked about, a major thing that could have been fixed in this issue. But otherwise, I want to know, Kyle, what did you think of this story overall? And feel free to use your notes.
Well, in general, I like this one. It felt very much like when you think of like a comic book story, kind of like quintessential. Like there's a little mystery, a little bit of action. There's some powers. Spider-Man does a really cool thing in the end of the fight with the. He makes that like almost web cushion, which I've never seen that before in a Spider-Man comic. So that's kind of cool.
Right.
To like absorb the impact of the dumpster. Right. I don't know how well that would work. Like maybe his web's stronger than I think it is. It had a very cool look to it, very cool rhythm. Just a few plot points they weren't used to maximum effect, I thought. But otherwise, I enjoyed it.
Right. Do you have any more notes to go through? Comments?
I enjoyed on page 4 the cool film noir shot of the DA with the curtains, like the shadows of the blinds.
Yes.
I thought that was cool looking. I mentioned the action scenes are really good. And I just complimented this web scene, but I did mention that I didn't know what the heck was happening at first. I had to go over it one more time, so maybe it could have been like set up better. Has he done this before? Is this like old news to you guys?
You mean?
No, I don't think I've ever actually seen that.
Which page was that on?
It's on page 20.
Let's see here. You mean when he puts the webs on his chest?
Yeah, like when I look closer, I could tell what's happening, but it just cuts to the shot with him like with it looks like a shag carpet over him, right?
No, you know what's funny? I've never ever seen him do that. So yeah, you're right, and it's smart because if you're gonna lift something that heavy, I mean, frick, if I he's not
lifting it, he's absorbing the impact.
Oh yeah, right, because it's hitting him. Yeah, but you're right, but that's really smart. Again, that's something that Roger Stern is good at. He's good at having these characters think of more creative ways to use their powers, right?
I just wonder if there should have been like a frame or two, like showing almost the progression of it instead of just hard cutting to him with like Austin Powers' chest, right?
Right. Yeah.
I think that's mostly what I wrote for notes. Like I said, for the most part, I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, me too. So Josh, I didn't think it was quite as strong as most issues of Amazing. What did you think of it?
I thought it was pretty good. I think that what you were saying is probably right. They probably didn't have the story completely finished or fleshed out before they started planning out the panels. And that definitely could be a reason why. It didn't always make sense at times. The kind of like last minute, like, oh, Lefty Donovan was just hypnotized the whole time. Is kind of
right.
Like, was he hypnotized, or was he more just like? Was it like a setup?
He says Donovan followed his post-hypnotic commands perfectly.
Okay.
And so that last shot started to bring him around. It's a good thing I was monitoring him. So like after he started coming to, it's like implied that the real Hobgoblin was controlling the glider and made it blow up in the building, like run into the building, right?
Yeah.
So it just kind of seemed like a cop-out, I guess, like to have this like big fight and also like have the cover be like, we finally know who the Hobgoblin is, and it's like this really cool cover, and then it's like, nah, just kidding.
Okay, I gotta warn you, Josh. Be ready because there's a lot more of that coming. Okay.
Oh, good.
Would it not be sorry, intercut here? Would it not be like in the Hobgoblin's best interest? Would it be better for him to leave Lefty alive as the quote-unquote Hobgoblin, and no matter what he says, everyone's going to know he's the Hobgoblin because he's flying around as the Hobgoblin? Or is it better to kill him and pretend he's dead? He's just going to attack again next issue anyway, isn't he? Like, you know what I mean? Like, is it more beneficial to leave him alive? Like, I don't know what his master plan is, beyond, killing Spider-Man.
That's a good point, yeah. I think it's one of those things where it's almost like the Emperor. Everything is going according to plan, whether it really is or not. We don't know.
If the plan's even worthwhile.
Yeah, exactly. But overall, I like this. Again, is a classic. It's like everything you said, Kyle, is music to my ears. Like, this is a classic superhero comic, and I absolutely recommend this. Would you recommend it, Kyle?
Yes.
All right. What about you, Josh?
Yeah, I would recommend this one.
Sweet. Okay, and now we're going to move on to Marvel Team Up. The very first issue of Marvel Team Up, as far as I know, written by spectacular Spider-Man scribe Bill Mantlo. And the big thing this month is that this is the first issue not written by J.M. DeMatteis. So the question is it any better? So Josh, you can take it from here.
Okay, so this issue we have Spider-Man teaming up with the Jack of Hearts. This kind of funky looking mutant, I guess. Like, I guess his powers were kind of mutations. I don't know. It's not exactly. I mean, it's clear what happened to him, but where he lies, I guess, in the superhero world is unclear. We see him in this building, and he's trying to plan his escape. Every time that his power level gets to a certain point, this gas starts to fill this room in the mansion that he's in, and it kind of subdues him and stops his powers. But he's been sprayed so many times, he's built up an immunity to it. So he's able to escape this time. And it turns out that it's S.H.I.E.L.D. that's been keeping him captive this entire time. So after we see him kind of escape and have a little bit of a fight with S.H.I.E.L.D., we cut over to Peter Parker and we get a nice little recap of his life. He's quitting school. He's a photographer. His love life is in shambles. Marcy Kane is kind of, I guess, kind of a love interest here, and feels upset that he's dropping out of school and thinks that he's ruining his life or whatever. So he runs out of the school, and we see Jack Hart, who is Jack of Hearts.
What a convenient
Very clever.
name, eh?
Yeah.
Imagine if it was Jack Clubb. I mean, he'd be screwed. But anyway.
Yeah, right. So
He'd be the king of clubs, wouldn't he?
Well, that's the thing. You got to wonder, what would he call himself? But anyway.
The king of clubs.
So we see him. He's in his car, and he's putting some makeup over his burnt half of his face, and he's taking the heart off of it, in front of his dead eye. He's putting sunglasses on. He's kind of covering up who he is, while also within the narration explaining what happened to him, where this explosion happened in his dad's office. I think it was. His dad was a scientist. Anyways, he gets out of his car and he bumps into Peter Parker, and he asks if he knows where Marcy Kane is. And when that happens, Peter's senses go off. So I love this moment where he starts walking away. He's like, it's not my problem. Marcy can take care of this herself.
Right.
And I'm like, oh no. Are we going back to jerk Peter?
Yeah,
but he ends up turning around and says, who am I kidding? I can't let this go on. So he puts on the Spider-Man costume, and then we cut back to Jack as he's walking through the halls of the school. And we get this flashback. He's kind of this popular kid, and he really likes Marcy Kane, and he writing poetry for her and stops her in the hall, and she thinks that he's just trying to distract her from her studies, and he shows her a poem that he wrote for her, and they kind of fall in love from there. But after the accident, he ran away and he never came back, so Marcy never knew what happened to him. So when he confronts her and runs into her again, she slaps him, is kind of upset, and when she does slap him, his powers kind of activate and S.H.I.E.L.D. bursts in. And then, honestly, from here, it just kind of turns into Spider-Man jumping in and fighting S.H.I.E.L.D., and then the two of them are fighting S.H.I.E.L.D. together, and then Spider-Man finds out that it's S.H.I.E.L.D., and they're kind of just having this, conflict back and forth until Spider-Man starts fighting him once he realizes it's S.H.I.E.L.D.,
Mm-hmm.
and he knocks him out by setting off a bomb in the school, because I can't remember. He
lights the Bunsen burners, so the gas is filling the room,
Right, but I'm trying to remember like the scientific reason. He gave some sort of scientific reason as like his powers, they keep growing, and he knows that type of energy, and it keeps growing unless another explosion comes in to counter it, and then it subdues it. I can't remember exactly the reason why.
Oh, I
It's
thought
been
it
a
was more
few
like
days
he couldn't smell or something. It was a weird thing like that.
Oh, maybe that's what it was.
And I think just the fact there's an explosion, like is a big enough explosion to knock him out.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Oh, see, since I'm a being composed almost entirely of energy, I don't need to breathe. That's why I didn't notice the gas from the Bunsen burners, which Spider-Man had turned on.
Until, yeah.
Right.
Boom.
Let me see.
I guess it's
My power burst ignited the gas from the Bunsen burners, and I took the brunt of the blast while he leaped from the window. So yeah.
Right.
And then that's pretty much the end. But he's A-okay because he's made out of energy.
Oh, actually, no. Sorry, on page 22, you're right, Joshua. I remember that sometimes sometimes snuff rig fires. What the heck is this thing? 1 second. Oh, sometimes they snuff rig fires with dynamite. So I set up a larger explosion. Yeah, it's a random piece of trivia.
Yeah. So Peter was the one that turned on the Bunsen burner. That way, when his energy hit the gas, it would explode and kind of subdue his energy. It's like adding more fuel to the fire to kind of make it go to its biggest and then die down, I guess, is kind of like the thought process behind this. I don't know if that science checks out.
It feels like somebody read this fact somewhere and said, "Oh, that's clever. I'm going to use that in my comic."
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, and then afterwards, so once the explosion happens, he's kind of just in the fetal position on the ground, and Marcy Kane comes back in and starts talking to him, and they're going to work together to kind of control his powers, and that's where this issue ends.
Right, and it says to be continued in the forthcoming Jack of Hearts limited series.
Yeah.
So
I'm assuming very, very limited.
Yeah, because I don't think I've ever seen Jack of Hearts story.
I really hate this dude's costume.
Oh, yeah, his costume is brutal. But here's the thing. I actually don't mind his character. I think his character is fine.
Right.
But his costume is, it's a little bit over the top. But here's the thing. The first thing I want to know, Josh, is this a step up from J.M. DeMatteis?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think so too. It actually feels like a story.
It does feel like a story. It feels like Peter Parker actually has a place in the story.
Mm-hmm.
It still does kind of feel a little bit thrown together, I guess, because Marcy Kane is a character that is a reoccurring character in Peter's life already. But I've never heard of this dude before. I've never heard of, wouldn't Peter also recognize him? Since they went to school together and he's in school with Marcy Kane?
Yeah, that's a good point.
You know what I mean? It just seemed like this character just kind of shows up, and I think that's where I think some of it kind of falls apart for me is when they just throw this character's backstory at you
but she
shove
doesn't
them
know
in a Spider-Man comic.
She doesn't know he became this supervillain character. Right. So she could have just said, "Oh, I dated some guy named Jack, and he's a douchebag," and ran off. I mean, it's not even really worth mentioning, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I guess that's why Peter doesn't know.
Right, but again, wouldn't Peter know him from school? If he's a popular person.
I mean, it looks like just 4 people at this school, but maybe, it's a bigger class and he doesn't know him. I don't know.
True, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I did, again, there's a few issues I had with this, like the long fight scene you mentioned, the fact that it's basically just a pilot, right, for the Jack of Hearts miniseries. That was a strike against it. But overall, I think a big improvement over J.M. DeMatteis. So, Kyle, what was your impression of this story?
Oh, well, the one that's improving must have been awful, because this one sure was. I don't know. I didn't like this at all.
Okay.
I thought it was very dense, but not in a good way. There's too many different things it was jumping between. Mm-hmm. And it was always explaining or setting things up, basically after the fact or immediately before they happen. And there's like, this is a theme I think I'll get back on to the other issues later, but a lot of coincidence. like the day Peter happens to go back to like clean out his lockers, the day Jack shows up, Jack happens to be asked about Marcy right after Peter's finished talking about Marcy. And then I don't know why, like you think Shield is a fairly well-known organization, is it not?
Yeah, but again, at this point, I don't know for sure in 1983 if it was.
Okay, my original point was, maybe, you think they would know police officers when they see them, basically, right? But then, ignoring that, let's say they're secretive, Peter should, like, see the shield on their head.
I know.
It's pretty obvious.
Right.
It's also really weird that Shield is just treating this dude like a bad guy.
Right.
Like they don't. I don't know. There's no like sympathy for him. They just lock him in a building and gas him up every time he uses his power.
Have we seen him before? Like, has he caused havoc in the past?
I don't think so. Not to my knowledge.
Well, he's appeared before. I'm looking him up. He's appeared in a few stories like Deadly Hands of Kung Fu, Incredible Hulk, and he's fought the Hulk before.
Right, and he's teamed up with Captain America as well. They talk about it in this issue when they introduce him.
Mm-hmm. So as far as as far as whether they think he's good or bad, I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, they obviously think he's bad. It's not warranted.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. Like, but I mean, is it justified? I don't know.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Yeah, it just seems really harsh, especially for like a government agency to just like not even question, I guess. And
well, then again, judging by how certain governments work against certain people,
very true.
Yeah, maybe it is accurate. I don't know, but yeah, I guess again, it's kind of hard to judge the story like compared to the issue of Amazing. It's not that great, but compared to the past 30 issues of Marvel Team Up, it's an improvement. That's the thing. But
okay.
Yeah. So let's talk about the art briefly. Ron Frenz does go on to be the regular artist of Spider-Man for like 2 or 3 years. I thought the art in this issue was a little bit generic. Kyle, what did you think of it?
I liked the stuff at the beginning in the mansion. It was kind of moody and atmospheric. But the best thing was on page 7. I don't necessarily like the actual art style, but I love the middle frame that basically encapsulates Spider-Man's entire character and dilemma. Like that's actually a pretty cool frame, like how much stuff it shows.
Good point. Yeah, good point.
Those are the two I picked out as being particularly good. Like there's obviously a lot of bad art in this too.
Yeah, it's just kind of, it's Mike Esposito, who we've seen his inks before. He's definitely a good inker. But I think the problem with Ron Frenz is that he tends to sort of imitate different artists. Like he imitates Kirby, Buscema, Steve Ditko. And it's almost like for every good panel, there's maybe 2 or 3 that are kind of just average. That's what I find. And this, like if you were to just glance through this, the art's pretty generic. Yeah, maybe a slight step above generic, but yeah, it definitely doesn't stand out as anything great. It's just kind of like
it's borderline ugly in spots. Like when Jack is like basically like covering himself in the car, and he puts those glasses on. Like he's hideous. Isn't he supposed to be a good-looking man?
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Like, he looks like an old, like middle-aged, like thug.
Right.
Yeah, I was really confused there because I was like, this guy seems like an old dude, right?
Yeah,
right.
This old man is just walking up to a school and talking to like a young lady. I don't know, it felt really weird. And then he looks very different from the flashback as well.
Right.
Of him in school.
Yeah. I'm just kind of scanning through. Yeah, basically, I think it's decent. It kind of reminds me of Kerry Gamble's art. It's kind of similar to that. Like, it's decent, but it's kind of unremarkable. I guess that's how I'll describe it.
Yeah, I didn't hate it. Mm-hmm. There's definitely moments where it stood out being pretty good, and then others where it was like, kind of half-baked. But I think as a whole, it was pretty inoffensive. Yeah, no worries. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm just skimming through page 13. I actually really like the 3 panels at the top, how it shows like the distance between them. Then they come together, and then there's slowly distance appearing again. Like that's pretty that's good visual storytelling there.
Yep, that's right.
Just using the space to show like where the characters are, like what they're thinking of each other.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So there are moments where it comes together, then the rest of the page looks like crap. But
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty early in Ron Frenz's career, so we can forgive him a little bit. But yeah, he's definitely got a ways to go, but it's not bad, just not great. But I am going to recommend this issue, especially compared to previous issues of Marvel Team Up. Josh, do you recommend this issue?
I don't know. Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't think it was great, but it wasn't as awful as Marvel Team Up can be. If somebody's saying, "Oh, I want to read Marvel Team Up," I would definitely point to this issue faster than I would many others.
Yeah, I agree with that. What about you, Kyle?
I don't think I would. Maybe if I was like a Jack of Hearts fan, I want to see him team up with Spider-Man. Like it would have some redeeming quality a little bit. Like, I'm seeing these two guys together, but like it's serviceable. But just compared to like the elegant simplicity for the most part of the last issue we looked at, this was just like a mess.
Yeah, that's probably goes for a lot of comics of that time, because I think at this point, Amazing Spider-Man by Stern Romita was probably one of the 2 or 3 best comics out there for sure. So.
I wonder if there is a Jack of Hearts fan. I wonder if who's your favorite superhero? Oh, it's Jack of Hearts.
Yeah.
Like a top 10 would be pretty impressive, I think.
Right. This guy's costume is the worst. There's so many different patterns and colors going on. He's got the heart motif on his eye and then on his boots. And he's got like these weird squiggly lines and polka dots on his like weird like shirt he's got going on, and then he's got like this skirt with squares. He's got an arrow that points straight to his ding dong. What's the
they probably just took some card and just copied everything that was on the card onto his costume.
Yeah, he's like the Jack, right, on a card.
Right.
He's a pretty tacky looking costume on that generally. But then, like, ignoring his design even, it's just like, okay, I don't know anything about this character. His powers are, he's got energy beams, like Cyclops, but he can fly. Like, it's pretty generic. Like, there's nothing, like, cool about these powers, right?
Right.
There's nothing about him that screams Jack of Hearts either.
Yeah, exactly, right.
Well, that's why it's worth so many hearts.
Right. It's not like the heart is, like, on his, like, burned onto his eye. It's a little like piece of plastic he puts on there to, I guess, hide his identity. Your name's Jack Hart. You call yourself the Jack of Hearts.
like what if his power is more like when his heart rate increases, he gets more powerful? There's something like linked to heart or like unique,
right. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like his name is Jack Hart, but so what?
Yeah, and like the energy kind of comes out of his eye too when he uses it, and like this. Is his body like, so when he's flying, are those just like motion lines, or is his body like disappearing in the energy?
Well, he is pure energy, so I would assume he is. Yeah.
So, okay.
I don't know though. Yeah, I see what you're saying though.
You're making fun of his name. This might be one of those an example to the contrary though, because usually like you have like Stephen Strange becomes a wizard with strange powers, right? It's like ironic, right? Yeah. This guy, like maybe his name was Jack Hart. None of his powers have anything to do with hearts. He just decided to like take an existing name,
right,
and make like a persona out of that, almost like a wrestler, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So it's like it's actually like maybe not quite so bad. Still looks awful though.
Well, he made several more appearances, so maybe we'll come across him again in a future episode, right? Hopefully.
Right.
So yeah. So on that note, we are going to move now to Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man. This is number 83. This issue's got everything.
That's the important part.
So Kyle, you're going to summarize this one for us.
Yeah, so you give me a task here. Let's see if my notes can do me any good.
Do you have the issue in front of you? You got the link, right?
I do. Yeah, I wrote like a summary too, but like it's pretty vague. So maybe I'll just kind of skim through. So yeah, it opens with the Black Cat is she basically saved this white cat from these other gangster cats in the alley. I guess they don't like it. I don't know.
How do you know they're gangsters? Wait a minute. Okay.
Well, they're like, wait a minute. Unintentional racism.
Yeah.
Anyway, so she saves this white cat. Yeah, it's kind of questionable. Not my remark necessarily, but just the decision to make them all black. Wait a minute. Anyway, so she saves this cat, but she's saying, "Oh, I shouldn't be out and about because she's been hospitalized for a previous injury, which I did not read about. So I assume it was in a fight sometimes.
Yeah, we don't like to talk about that.
It's about 2 years ago it happened.
Yeah,
She's been in the
so she's
hospital
been out
since.
for a while.
Yeah, it's been dragged out for a long time. Yep.
Yeah. So meanwhile, Spider-Man appears in this warehouse to stop these. What are they again? They are. They're the fortune credit cards.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So this is just kind of a random, Spider-Man just solving a problem, fighting some bad guys, and he easily foils them. There's no suspense or mystery to it.
I mean, usually if you're forging credit cards, you're kind of doing it in like a basement somewhere, not in a freaking giant warehouse, right, with like 20 goons.
There could be a basement. There's not really a good establishing shot, if I recall. Let me scan back here just for a second. The vacuum press comes straight from a basement of an apparently abandoned. Oh, it's a warehouse. It's the basement of a warehouse. There you go. It's both.
Sure.
So then, who is this again? This is the chief.
Captain Jean DeWolf.
Yeah, she comes in and basically flirts with Spider-Man, and they also take this go in not great lengths, but they spend way too much time explaining the whole scheme of these credit card forgers, who gives a crap.
Right,
right. Forging credit cards good enough, Spider-Man beats them up. I don't understand why they linger on it.
I agree. Right. Why try to explain it? Who cares?
So, and again, when I'm summarizing the plot of this one, I'll get to it at the end, but it's very. It seems like it's random. It just here's this, here's that, here's this. But I do understand the greater thematic reasoning behind it. It's actually fairly ambitious. But just continuing along, Spider-Man returns to the hospital. He finds out that Black Cat's not in her room. He freaks out. And they basically, when she shows up and says she's been out and about, he scolds her, because they're dating and he's worried about her safety now. One of my favorite frames, not to dwell too much on art right now, is at the bottom of page 11, the shot close-up of Spider-Man's eyes, and the description is he's beginning to realize that the relationship will be difficult. There's a lot of little moments like that in this one, which I think are intentionally comedic. I'm not sure.
I don't think that was. No, I think that was dead serious.
There's no way you could write that. It's like almost like a dad joke or something. Like an old marriage is so rough kind of joke, right?
I don't think it's a joke though. I think Bill Mantlo intended that to be completely serious, and dramatic. What do you think, Josh?
I would have to agree with you, Mike, because from the writing so far, it's a lot of things you would think they're trying to play off as a joke. They play it off dead serious.
Right.
Even some of the goofier, even some of the more serious plot lines end up being goofy because of the writing. Because the amount of times that we've had Black Cat rushed back into intensive care, and it's so extremely melodramatic that it becomes comedic.
So, on that note, on the very next page 13, it happens again. Spider-Man is torn. Can he date Black Cat and work alongside her, even though she's been a villain in the past? What's that going to say about his reputation? He's wondering all these big questions. Right. And he leaps out the window. I'll see you later, Felicia. I've got to think about this. And
I know.
The description is he runs.
He runs.
And it makes me think it's got to be intentional. It's so hilarious.
No.
I laughed out loud when I saw this frame.
No.
And just the way he's leaping, even just his pose, it's so comedic.
No, I'll tell you right now, this is state of the art 1983 Marvel Comics. This is Bill Mantlo. Bill Mantlo was not a top tier writer, but he was one of those guys that kind of wrote everything. He did Micronauts, ROM, Spider-Man, Hulk. And this is kind of the way he writes. I love his style, but I've always kind of known him as this, melodramatic and kind of corny, so this is definitely all done completely straight-faced.
Okay,
and
well then.
And Josh, you can concur based on what you've read by Bill Mantlo, right?
Yeah. It's mostly like this.
Yeah. I mean, I love it, but it's I love Roger. Roger Stern's better, but I do love this.
I definitely don't mind it. I think the problem is when it gets dragged out so long because they don't exactly know what they want to do with it yet, And then when they finally figure out what it is they want to do, it usually doesn't line up with what they've been dragging out for so long. Because like Peter Parker beforehand was talking about how great it is that she's going to reform and be a superhero with him. And that they can work together. So it's like, now they're just changing that to add more conflict into the story, because they had her laying in the hospital for months now. And now it just, I don't know, it just seems backwards. Like, maybe did they think that we would just forget
I think
what happened before this, or like?
Yeah, like one of the tricks I think writers like this use is they have a sort of melodramatic, like, oh no, what am I going to do? Whether or not that's logical or not, they just have them worried about stuff, right? Or just have these forced conflicts.
Which is fine, but I think that the problem is it's contradicting something he was melodramatic about before. Like, being melodramatic about the opposite thing, issues ago, right?
Yeah,
I think that's where the problem is. I don't mind when they when it turns into a soap opera type of story where it's super melodramatic and they amp up that like angst. That's fine with me. I think it's just when it starts to like unravel and not make sense just to have the drama.
Yeah.
I guess I have the advantage of being unencumbered by previous issues. I'm seeing this one in a bubble.
Right.
So it's like I'm seeing, and I'll continue with the description, but lots of different reasons for Peter Parker to reconsider his path in life, and that's a continuous theme throughout this issue, which it's not always execute the best, but I do appreciate the ambition where this isn't like he's not fighting a villain in this issue aside from the credit card forgers, right? It's a look at Peter Parker's like psychology, like what he's thinking, what he's going to do, and how he's responding to basically seeing what's happening around him. It almost like, because the last issue we just covered was I felt kind of random and had a lot of coincidence, and this one's even more like disjointed, but it almost serves the narrative because you're seeing all these different examples, right? Everything kind of ties back to Peter. Right. I guess that's more of a thoughts segment comment. So anyway, continuing, Peter does move on to, I believe he goes to meet with the staff of the Daily Bugle because they're going to be covering the arraignment of the Punisher. So I missed him getting caught. And it's J. Jonah Jameson again likens the Punisher, how he had he was trying to do the right thing, but ended being a bad guy in the end, right? And he kind of says that's going to happen to Spider-Man. That's why we got to stop Spider-Man, which again makes Peter think, right? And again, I was actually going to ask you guys when I was reading this. It's like, okay, this is cool. They're telling me all about the Punisher. Like, this is great detail. But do you already know this? Is this new news to you guys, or?
No, I think they revealed it pretty early on in the Punisher's career, like probably 10 years before this, or 8 years before this.
This is just the total summary then. You guys already know his whole backstory here.
Well, but here's the thing is, at this point, the Punisher was only showing up maybe once a year. And like he'd show up in Spider-Man, then a year later he'd show up in Daredevil, but he was... And
he's been showing up sporadically in Spectacular too, the last few issues. We've seen him in prison.
Right.
Interacting with some other villains and like planning his escape. And then the conclusion to that was once he gets out of jail, he kind of goes berserk and starts attacking people and shooting at people and trying to kill them for like petty crimes like jaywalking, or somebody crumpled up a newspaper and threw it in the trash can, but it bounced out of the trash can, so he shot them. Ridiculous. And then Kingpin threw a couch at him, and that's why he's in jail.
That'll do it.
But basically,
so we've been getting hints, but we haven't gotten this much detail in Spectacular, at least.
And the key thing to understand is at this point, Punisher was just another villain. Like he was, he would show up once in a while. He would fight Spider-Man or Daredevil, and yes, he was usually trying to kill criminals, but he was still considered a bad guy because he was a murderer, right? And so he was not like the star that he would become later. Like he only got his miniseries, I think, in 1985 maybe. So he's still a couple years away from ever having his own series. Yeah. So
well, see, like they spend 2 or 3 pages on his backstory, which has again little to do with what's happening in the current, but again doesn't matter because it's so disjointed. So I guess I was asking if it's redundant because it was great for me. It's like, I guess if I was some kid just picking up this issue, oh great, if I hadn't seen him before, here's the Punisher, right? Like it's got everything.
I just
everything
think
you want to know.
It wasn't common knowledge, that's for sure. It was not common knowledge, so
That's a good thing it's here then. Okay. So then basically they move on to the courtroom where the arraignment happens, and the Punisher's lawyers trying to get him to say he's insane. And the Punisher doesn't like that very much, so he freaks out.
Mm-hmm.
He's not insane. He's very, very calculated in his motivation, he thinks. And it just ends with Spider-Man again reflecting,
Right. Yeah, because he's like...
I'm doing the same thing. I'm stopping crime. I'm a vigilante.
Yeah, and he's like, and about whether that happened to the... Oh, so he says, no thanks, Ben, I'll walk. And in his head, and wonder about my own brand of costume crime fighting, and about whether what happened to the Punisher will ever happen to Spider-Man. The end, right? Mm-hmm. So Kyle, this was written by the same guy, Bill Mantlo, that wrote Marvel Team Up. So how do you compare it to that one?
The one we just did, you mean the Jack of Hearts?
Yeah.
Yeah, this again, I liked the ambition of this. I don't know if it always landed that. In fact, I know it didn't.
Yeah.
But you know how you can look at something, and even though you don't think it's well done, you appreciate what they were trying to do.
Yeah.
Because most of my experience with superhero movies, and I always complain, it's like it always just ends up in a big CGI battle, and it's always the same world-ending threat. So I like it when they do smaller stories, and this is perfect. It's almost like an examination of Spider-Man and who he is and what he will do. You guys are telling me this is redundant as a whole because it's in the face of things he said previously, so I can't speak to that. Just speaking to this one issue, I think I liked it the best of all four today, to be honest.
Really?
Right.
And not while acknowledging the Hobgoblin one is a better, more entertaining story, this one, its ambition and it trying to be different, appealed to me, just what it was trying to do.
Right.
Right.
What about you, Josh?
I think that if the major events that happened in the story were reversed, it would have made more sense to me and the larger picture. Knowing that Peter has wanted to work with Black Cat as heroes and partners, if after this he goes to visit Felicia in the hospital and she's out in the Black Cat costume, and that's when he has second thoughts about her becoming a hero. That makes more sense to me. When it's the opposite way, it doesn't work. Only because, again, I have, having read all of these spectacular Spider-Man issues, I have the knowledge of the fact that, he wants to work together. So it just seems weird and out of place. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things in this issue that seemed out of place, almost as if it was a different writer jumping in for one issue. Since when does Captain DeWolf, have the hots for Spider-Man?
Yeah, that isn't unusual.
Does everybody need to be in a relationship with Peter now? It's just so strange. It also didn't even fit into the story. It was just this weird thing that was shoehorned in. Say hi to Felicia for me, and if that doesn't work out, why don't you call me? It's why are you kidding me? I don't know. It just felt weird and out of place. And then again, him scolding Felicia for having the Black Cat costume on, even though she wasn't causing crime. Weird. Well,
it makes sense in a way because she's been a villain this whole time, right?
Yeah, I mean, she's a cat burglar, so technically, yeah.
It's like if Batman was running with Harley Quinn and she was dressed when she was with the Joker, right? In the Harley Quinn costume, right? But he's also gone
out with her fighting crime before in the Black Cat costume.
Well, see, I don't have that background. It's probably ridiculous then, yes.
Yeah, so it's just strange, I guess. Because, the two of them teamed up together to take down Doc Ock and the Owl. So it's just
he's also, you could argue, I don't know, getting a grander picture, but you could argue he's not, thinking straight. He's stressed out. She's supposed to be in the hospital room. She's not there. Yeah. He snaps on her. It's like a relationship thing, right? And, turn up to 11 probably, but still, it's I think that's the idea is you're seeing Spider-Man, and it doesn't go deep enough, but Spider-Man is torn a bunch of different ways in this issue. Unfortunately, it focuses more on the things that are tearing him apart than his actual like what he's thinking about them, if that makes sense.
Well, now I just want to point out this issue. We do have a new co-editor, Danny Fingeroth. So, I mean, it's possible that he influenced the direction of the story, unlikely. But we also have a different artist. And as we said, if he is helping with the plot, maybe he threw in that little shot of Jean DeWolf. And then maybe Bill Mantlo added in the dialogue later. We don't know for sure. But I want to ask you, Josh, what do you think of the art compared to previous issues done by Al Milgrom?
I thought it was fine. To be honest, I don't remember particular moments of the art in this issue, and I'm not sure if that was just reading so many comics for so long straight,
right?
Or if it's just because there wasn't a lot of like action. I thought everything, like, I don't think anything stood out as weirdly laid out or anything,
right?
There were no moments that like stuck out that the art looked bad. So I mean, yeah, I think it was successful.
Well, here's the thing. I think Greg LaRocque, I know him from Legion of Superheroes. I think his art is good. I think it's actually not drastically better than Al Milgrom's art in this issue, but I do notice towards the end some of the close-ups of the Punisher were really well done when he's like getting angry in the court. But there's also a lot of really awkward shots, like, when Peter jumps out the window, that's not a great shot.
No.
It looks like something Al Milgrom would do. So, yeah, the art wasn't spectacular, but I think slightly better than Al Milgrom. But, Kyle, what did you think of the art?
There's a couple pages or panels I'd give credit to for being particularly good. Page 16, when they're describing, like, the Punisher's, like, history, I like how it's, like, laid out, like the photo of him from the military, and then, like, crime scene photos, newspaper clippings. Like, that's a neat little touch.
I also did notice that picture in particular of him in the military looks exactly like Clark Gregg, the guy who plays Coulson, Agent Coulson in the Marvel movies.
You're
like, it's almost uncanny how much that looks like him.
Yeah, good point.
He looks exactly like Agent Coulson.
Yeah, and I also like the stuff on page 8. I think I'm a sucker for these silhouette shots, but I think that's really cool with him, like, swinging between the buildings in silhouette, and then, like, the closer shot where you see, like, him being haunted by the Hobgoblin.
Yeah.
Like, that's some pretty, like, dramatic, like, I'd say effective art.
Yeah, well, and it's also obvious that Greg LaRocque is more of an artist, and Al Milgrom is just not a great artist, and Greg LaRocque is more of a professional artist. Like, he clearly knows what he's doing. Actually, I thought the opening pages were really good, like with the cat in the alley and then Black Cat coming in. Those are some of the best pages in the issue, I think.
Yeah, her shadow is pretty cool at the beginning on the wall.
Right. And also, it's still inked by Jim Mooney, so it's still got that classic Silver Age vibe to it. So overall, yeah, I thought the art was a slight step up from previous issues. I guess one thing against it, especially for me and Josh, is they've dragged out this Black Cat thing for so long. It's like every issue you think it's over, and then there's always one more to go, So unfortunately, I'm kind of just waiting for them to wrap it up. So I don't know what's going to happen next, but hopefully they'll kind of move on to new things. But anyway, overall, I definitely still recommend it. Kyle, what about you?
I absolutely recommend this one. I guess I enjoyed it a lot. It's with a few notes though. Just I do recommend it. I do wonder though, because like this is at this time was still more or less directed to children, right, or younger readers. Yep. And I don't see the appeal to them in this issue. Like, it's pretty dull compared to like some of the other ones we've read. Like, there's no major fight. There's really no action.
Well, yeah, I will concur that when I was a kid, I loved Amazing Spider-Man at this point, but I did not like Spectacular as much. Like, in fact, I think I had a few and I just sold them. So you're probably right about that. It's probably not as appealing to kids.
Yeah, and also one more comment while I have the floor. It's a little unrelated because we missed it earlier from my notes. But when I was talking about things that must be intentionally funny, but maybe they're not.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
Page 16, Punisher backstory. Where was it? He was on leave visiting his family. They decided to go on a picnic. They chose a lousy spot, the scene of a gangland execution.
Yeah, that was definitely not meant to be funny because that is the Punisher's origin. So
no, I know, but the way they deliver that, it's like a punchline.
It's
You talk about a lousy spot.
Yeah.
like with the narration, you can almost picture like a guy smoking a cigarette. Like
I picture Ron Howard from like Arrested Development, you know.
Right.
Well, I'll tell you, if you read last issue, you'd get it even more so. Like the scene where he shoots the guy for, what is it, running the red light?
Yeah. So
littering.
He shoots a guy for littering on accident
with a gun.
And this cab driver that's driving by while gunfire is going on accidentally runs through a red light because he's distracted by the gunfire from the Punisher. So Punisher looks over, sees he accidentally ran a red light and starts shooting at him.
Wow.
Like
but yeah, the narration, like, littering, that's a crime. He's dead. Running a red light, also a crime. They must be punished.
Does Punisher go back and pick up his bullet casings? Otherwise, he's a hypocrite.
Oh, look at that.
There you go.
Busted.
I recommend this one for me anyway.
Yeah. No, it's definitely good. Yeah, I like it. I think the only problem is that whereas every issue of Amazing Spider-Man is something new, unfortunately, Spectacular tends to kind of go over the same things over and over. But yeah, I definitely did enjoy this one. So I'd recommend it. So in a usual episode, we'd wrap it up at this point, but we have an annual to cover. This is Marvel Team Up Annual number 6, featuring Spider-Man, Cloak and Dagger, our favorites, and the New Mutants. And a story I thought I read, but I actually never read this New Mutant story before. So this was pretty cool. Yeah, but yeah, Josh, you can take it from here.
Yeah, sure. I'm going to try to skim through the story quicker than normal. So that way we can start talking about some of the stuff inside. But also because I definitely was not prepared to go through the entire story in depth.
I can help you if you need help.
Okay, yeah, sure. So we see Spider-Man, he's swinging towards a warehouse, and Cloak and Dagger also end up showing up there, and they're there for some drugs, because this is like one of the warehouses where they've been doing tests on people. So the three of them team up once again, and it's like a few pages of fighting, and then when they finally get, defeat them all, they go into the warehouse where they're holding all of the people, and it turns out that they're all dead, which was pretty shocking, especially after reading the other 3 issues. Seeing a bunch of dead kids on the ground was definitely kind of
morbid,
kind of a shock. Yeah. Definitely intense. And then after that, we cut to the New Mutants, and they're kind of walking around after seeing. Oh, they go to a Broadway play. They see Cats, and they're kind of like walking through the town, and they go to an arcade instead of going back to
Xavier's,
the mansion.
Yeah,
right. And these thugs, I don't even remember what happens here. These thugs come up to them and start like causing trouble, and they start fighting each other, and it turns out that these thugs are part of the people, like part of the gang that's doing the tests. So it's
that was confusing to me, because I thought they were running from the hoodlums at the arcade or whatever, and wound up running into the guys conducting the test. But I couldn't decide if they were different guys or the same guys that were chasing them.
Well, and it's hard. Sunspot, when he punches them, you see 20 guys go flying, so it's kind of hard to tell who's who.
Right.
Yeah.
So Wolfsbane and Sunspot get captured.
Right.
Spider-Man, I don't remember why he goes to a church. Does he know Cloak and Dagger go here?
He detects them with his Spidey sense, I believe, near the church. Okay, he's looking for them.
Yeah, my Spider sense kicks in. Yeah.
Right. So Cloak and Dagger are there talking to the priest. Spider-Man shows up and is spying on them, and that's when the New Mutants run in, trying to hide from the gang members who are chasing them, trying to capture them to do tests. And there's kind of a bit of a miscommunication there. Moonstar. Oh, I guess she's not called Moonstar in this issue, right? She's called Psyche, right?
Psyche.
Psyche, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I know her as Moonstar. I don't think I've read too many of when she was called Psyche.
Yeah, and she's
But,
also called Mirage in other stories, so it gets a little confusing.
Oh, right. So her powers have to do with like emotions, and
Well, yeah, she's able to create an image of your greatest fear.
right.
You, yeah,
And that's that causes Cloak to kind of go a little bit crazy, and Cloak and Dagger have to kind of help each other Dagger has to help him calm down a bit, and anyways, they decide that they need to all team up together to get their friends back. Their friends are being tested on, and then Wolfsbane was the one that was injected, I believe, or were they both injected?
Both.
Yeah, so they were both injected with this serum, and they start fighting these goons. Wolfsbane goes a little bit crazy and accidentally bites Dagger.
right.
And there was venom, or this like, I don't know how it came on her teeth, but the venom that she was injected with was on her teeth when she bit Dagger. So Dagger's got this like poison inside of her now. Cloak and Dagger have to, or she goes crazy. That's what it is. Okay. Sorry, I'm kind of like catching up with the story as I'm skimming through it. It causes her powers to kind of explode and go out of control, and that's when Cloak comes in and has to absorb the light in his like black hole cape, and the two of them kind of calm each other down. And
Well, we'll see what happens is Dagger gets the venom from Wolfsbane, and if I recall, Cloak, does he not absorb Sunspot when he's gone crazy?
Right.
And he absorbs it that way. So then they use their energies or symbiosis or whatever to calm each other down.
Oh, right.
Yes, right. Yeah, so then by page 32, they're fine, yeah.
Yeah, and that's pretty much where it all ends. Like, they defeat the goons, and once the two of them kind of we calm each other down, they all go their separate ways.
Yeah, it kind of ends kind of abruptly. It's kind of weird because Cloak and Dagger just disappear, and then it's kind of weird. Like the last, it's just Cloak and Dagger, like Dagger and I still have much to learn about our powers and ourselves. We must do so together and alone. And then Spiderman just says, "Yeah," and just says,
"Yeah,
yeah,
yeah."
Weird. So yeah, I don't know what to say about that.
It's more mature than I think a lot of the stories that we're used to. I see where they were going with this. I don't see how it furthers Cloak and Dagger's story.
It probably doesn't, because every time they appear, it's kind of the same story, right?
Yeah, Spider-Man did not need to be in this issue whatsoever.
Not really, no.
Like, it would have been, I think, a lot stronger of a story if it was just Cloak and Dagger and the New Mutants together. We could have had some interaction with those characters and Cloak and Dagger, and how it kind of seeing like the other side of things. How, Cloak and Dagger work together because that's all they have, and the X-Men do the same. So, like, I don't know, Spider-Man just seemed really out of place.
Right.
Like the mediator.
I know in the story, right. I know in the story he's like the thing, I guess, that kind of connects them together. But also at the same time, like, it's only like that because that's how it was written. Like, there's no...
You don't need him because the New Mutants run to the church for safety, which happens to be where Cloak and Dagger are anyway. So Spider-Man does nothing to make that happen.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So it's just like...
So definitely not a great Spider-Man story, but I'm going to ask you, Kyle, is this the first time you've come across the New Mutants?
And Cloak and Dagger, yeah, all of them.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So let's start with Cloak and Dagger. What's your impression of Cloak and Dagger?
I thought they were pretty cool. Like, I kind of liked their... I don't know if it's like a way of speaking, but just like how they're kind of like they understand each other so well. Because like they are like opposites, like yin and yang almost, right?
Right.
So they were neat, and they didn't seem like vindictive, more like they're just trying to do like they're not stopping the drug That's really, were they drug dealers? I don't know what the villains even were. They're still like faceless in this issue.
Well, they're drug manipulators. Like I think they're experimenting on kids with drugs.
Yeah, I got that.
To create, their own race of or their own group of mutants.
Well, at first they were trying to make they were making a drug that was super addictive so that they could push it on kids, and they accidentally make Cloak and Dagger.
Right.
And then they're now Cloak and Dagger's trying to stop us. We got to make more Cloak and Daggers to fight them.
Right.
So I understood all that. I just didn't understand like who they were and what they want beyond that. Like are they stopped now? Is that the end of them?
No.
Okay.
No.
They've
done this. Cloak and Dagger have appeared in a lot of spectacular Spider-Man issues for the past few months, and the first issue, their first appearance was fantastic. I thought it was one of my favorite issues we've read on the podcast.
Right.
It really goes in a little bit deeper with like what happened to them and how they're kind of messed up and how they want to kind of take things into their own hands and single-handedly stop these guys. And it doesn't matter what they have to do. They're, if they have to kill them or what, they'll do it. And at the end of the issue, they're successful and they stop and they kind of like shut down the place that was holding them hostage. But then every issue after that they've appeared in, they've fought more of these guys.
Right.
There's never been like this big bad guy. Yeah, it's kind of just like this endless group of people.
Like the war on drugs.
Right. There you go. Yep.
Yeah, really.
Okay, well, I mean, aside from the villains, I kind of sidetracked. The Cloak and Dagger I thought were cool. I like the designs of them. Like, unlike how we're talking about Jack of Hearts, or these guys, they have a very like distinct like look to them, but they're not overdone in their design.
Simple, yes.
Both their powers are very easy to understand and very cool. Cloak in particular, actually, like confession, I was trying to come up with a superhero character a long time ago, and like, man, that's basically him. So I guess I'm not doing that one.
They're both really cool. Yeah, I totally agree. Like they're like an untapped resource. Of course, there is a TV show now, but they don't, as far as I know, they look nothing like this at all. They completely throw these designs out the window. So I'm not sure.
Dagger could like use a bit of a redesign. Like the dagger on her chest is a little much.
It's ridiculous. Yeah.
The cloak is perfect.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But
I think that this is also the first issue where Cloak and Dagger look like their faces look like real people. Like they gave them like physical features that you can look at the character and say, oh, that's this person, that's this person. Like Cloak especially, in almost every issue that he's appeared in, it's just been like this generic black man,
right?
Like blank face. Like hasn't really had a character yet.
Well, it's kind of cool though for him in particular because he's cloaked, right? So he's supposed to be mysterious. And even actually, I'm still on the last page here, but the last shot of him and Dagger, he basically looks like a skull the way the shadows are done on his face.
Yeah, no, I think that
that's an appeal. I think.
I think it's done really well in this issue.
Oh, okay.
It's in previous issues where I don't think it's done super well. Because when you do see his face, like when he's not in shadow, it's just this like blank expression, like no features, no lines on the face. It's just like a mouth and eyes.
You should never see his face
first time
in shadow. It feels like.
What's that?
Yeah,
it feels like you should never even see his face like that. He should always be in shadow.
Yeah, I would argue that's actually better. I agree with that. Yeah, because like the shot on page digital 6, I actually don't like that when they. Is that what you're saying, Josh? Like when they show his face there?
Right. I think that if they're going to show his face, they should like make it look like a person.
Well, the other problem
is what I'm trying to say, you know what I mean? Like
they're supposed to be teenagers, and he does not look like a teenager there.
Yeah.
So that's probably just on the part of the inker, but But yeah, we'll talk about the art in a minute. But let's jump over to the New Mutants. Kyle, what'd you think of the New Mutants?
They kind of got lost in the shuffle on this one for me.
Okay.
The Cloak and Dagger, like they seem distinct. I kind of got them at least as much as I could in this short issue. But the New Mutants, like I actually had to when I was writing a little description so I wouldn't forget what happened, right?
Right.
And like I had to go back and look up Cannonball's name because I was like,
really?
It's like Psyche.
Okay.
I got an idea of her. Wolfsbane, I got an idea of. Sunspot, I guess. Like if you asked about their personalities, I couldn't tell you anything. But if you asked like what they can do, I get, well, other than Cannonball, I know what they can do.
Okay, so yeah, you don't know what Cannonball can do?
I guess he flies through people like Cannonball, but it's just based
Well, no, he flies, not through people. He flies, and he's invulnerable when he flies.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then Psyche obviously creates illusions based on your greatest fear.
Yep,
Sunspot
cool.
is like super strong. And Wolfsbane...
I thought it was like bright and hot, like a fire, like almost Human Torch kind of.
Well, no.
Yeah, he can like absorb solar energy.
But yeah, I think the key thing is that he's strong. I mean, he's also exuding or burning energy, but it's key thing
Right.
though, it's strong. Yeah.
I think that's where his strength comes from, though, is that solar energy. Like, I think that the basis of it is that he can absorb solar light and then use that, whether it be with his super strength or like kind of flame-awning, like
yeah, like Human Torch.
Yeah.
And then Wolfsbane turns into a werewolf, or she can also turn into a half human, half wolf.
Right.
Oh,
That's her power. So yeah, I want to say first I want to talk about the art. Like we'll get to the overall thing really quickly, but I just want to say as far as the art, you'll notice it's Ron Frenz again, the same guy that drew the Jack of Hearts story. However, it's a different inker, and I found the art here much better. What did you think, Josh?
Yeah, it was great. I really like the art in this issue.
Yeah, it's nice and clean. Like, again, I've never heard of this inker. Maybe he's not the greatest artist, but at least he's not a generic 80s Marvel guy. It's like he looks like he's actually trying. So I did like that. Kyle, what'd you think?
I don't think like the actual like art itself, like the images are fine, but like there's a lot lost in like what's going on. Like you said, like Sunspot like knocks 20 guys away. Right. Nobody knows if the thugs are the same guys lurking under the bridge. I don't think they are. I don't even remember the other guys getting, like Wolfsbane. I think she gets shot in the, like grazed in the face.
Right.
I don't remember that happening beyond, And then there's just like the fight scenes are just here's a shot. You can tell what's happening in that one exchange, I guess, but it's not like that first issue we looked at where it flows. It's just kind of random moves happening, right?
Right.
And then there's also, I guess I put notes for this. There's an awful, I think it's page 25. Let me see and bring it up here if it's the right one I wrote down. Yeah, when the villain's got Wolfbane's face, that is like awful looking. It looks like he's like holding a mask over the bottom half of her face. It looks
like.
Right.
Poorly drawn, yeah.
And then also just her wolf form in general seems to fluctuate so much. Like I get like on that same page at the bottom, I think she's transitioning between the two, maybe. But like the wolf looks different in like every other frame it appears.
Well, yeah, keep in mind there is two forms. There's the wolf and there's the half wolf. So yeah, if you go to page 27, she's half wolf. And then she jumps, but then she's all black. No, that's Sunspot? Wait.
Yeah, that was the next thing I was going to say. He looks awful, too. That's like such an unoriginal... Like, what's evil Sunspot look like? It's black and masked with, like, vampire fangs. Done.
Yeah. Not great.
Yeah, from what I understand of Wolfsbane, she can kind of, like, control how far she goes into the werewolf form.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and she becomes more feral. Like when she's a wolf, she doesn't have a human mind. She has an animal mind. So that's the counterbalance there.
But even like frames, like if you go page 29, like there's the 3 frames of her like leaping on Dagger. And I don't know, like the proportions look kind of like they're constantly shifting to me, or they're just awkward angles. Like
sure.
It's not particularly like she doesn't look consistent, At least not to me. Like especially the shot where she's biting Dagger, it looks like a totally different design.
Yeah, I'll give you that. Although I do think, but again, I think the inks are nice. Like it's clean art. It's not great, but I think it's nice and clean. Yeah,
like I said, the art itself I don't mind so much. It's more just like how it's not conveying what it needs to.
Right. The storytelling's not great. Yeah.
Which is to me that's part of the art criticism, I would think.
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Now another thing I want to point out, because I've read most of the New Mutants comics from the 80s, there's a scene that's really out of character and it really irked me because one of the things Chris Claremont is famous for is, Cyclops was the original leader of the X-Men, but at one point he left and he made Storm the leader of the X-Men. And at the time, it was not only unusual to have a female leader, it was unusual to have a black team member as the leader of the team, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was like something he was kind of known for. Well, with the New Mutants, when he first introduced them, the original leader of the team was, what's her name? Vietnamese girl. Karma?
Karma.
I'm mixing them up. What's Psyche's other name? Psyche has two names.
Moonstar.
Mirage. No, she has three names. Psyche, Mirage, then Moonstar.
Yeah.
But the original leader of the New Mutants was Karma, who's a Vietnamese girl. So not only is she a female, she's Vietnamese, the country that the United States was just at war with a few years earlier, right? So that was a big deal. So then she leaves the team, and at this point, Psyche is the leader, and Cannonball is kind of the co-leader, but he's supposed to be this awkward. He's supposed to be a hillbilly. He's supposed to be awkward. He's supposed to be kind of like bumbling and goofy, right? So she's the leader. So because this issue is not written by Claremont, it's written by Bill Mantlo. What does Bill Mantlo do? He shows a scene. Where is it here? I'm trying to find it. Where Cannonball. There's actually a caption where it says
something about him being how to lead.
Right. Right.
To know, yeah.
They say something like
know how to lead.
Yeah,
how to lead.
They say something like they follow their natural leader or something like that, and it just really irks me because then you also see like when Psyche is attacking Cloak with the image, he freaks out, and then Cannonball tells her to stop, and he grabs her, and she kind of just falls into his arms, right? Like, oh, protect me, which is, I'm not saying he can't do that, but the role should, like, she is the leader of the team. So why is he treating her like she's an inferior kind of, you know?
Bob, page 13 is the line for reference.
She's not the leader of the team, though.
No, Psyche is.
Psyche is not. No, Karma is.
No, but Karma's gone. Karma's not in.
Psyche became the leader of the team when...
That's what I said. Yeah. Karma disappeared, and Psyche became the leader. And you can see, like, I'm reading the issues right now by Louise Simonson, and Psyche is the leader of the team, which sometimes bothers Cannonball because she's bossing everyone around, but she was definitely the leader of the team. So that's why, I don't know, it just kind of irks me that, like I said, there's that one caption. The others instinctively obey, following this natural leader. It's kind of just like Bill Mantlo, instead of reading the actual New Mutants comic, just said, okay, well, I'm just going to do generic team. So obviously this guy's got to be the leader, right? So just kind of irked me. But anyway, I love the New Mutants. So Kyle, what'd you think of their powers, like compared to the X-Men? Because I'm sure you know the X-Men, right?
Yeah. Well, they just seem like more X-Men. I don't know. Something makes them different.
Well, here's the thing: is that you talked about creating your own superheroes. I've tried to create my own superheroes. They're all terrible. Yeah. I just love the fact that their powers are very specific. Like I like the fact that Wolfsbane can turn into not just a werewolf, but a werewolf and a half werewolf. And when she's a wolf, she has the mind of a wolf. Like that's not something that, I mean, maybe someone else will think of that, but I thought it was cool. I like Sunspot's look, the fact that he's all black, I like how Cannonball is invulnerable only when he's flying, that's kind of cool. Right. And then Mirage's powers are not great, or Psyche, sorry, but I still think she's a great character, so I don't know. I've always liked this team, so I think they're really cool.
I think that they are a good team, and there are some really great New Mutant stories, but it is... I think it kind of funny that you mentioned that because it originally they didn't want to make this comic. They didn't want to make the New Mutants team because they didn't want to do X-Men again.
Right.
But I can't remember who it was at the time. But
it was probably Jim Shooter, the editor, right? The editor-in-chief.
Right. He said, make this. They were trying to, fight it. And he said, if you don't make a new, X-Men but different, somebody else will. So, yeah. And it was also rushed out as well because it was supposed to be its own comic, but then it was pushed into the Marvel graphic novel too.
Right.
So, yeah. I definitely see what you mean where it feels like just more X-Men and it doesn't. I guess it is a little weird that it's like a whole different team when they're still part of the X-Men
Yeah, if you gave me an X-Men issue and it was like Wolverine and these 4 characters, I wouldn't know. Oh, these are the New Mutants. You know, like
Right.
there's nothing that like makes them different at all, really. Like every X-Men's different in their powers.
Right.
Maybe that's
and they're
why.
wearing the same costumes even.
Yeah.
Well, but I think that's intentional. Like the whole idea was that, well, you know, the original X-Men have kind of left. Now we've got the new X-Men, which is Wolverine, Storm, Colossus, Nightcrawler, Banshee. So now we've got no one in training. So let's introduce these new characters so they can be the teenagers and they can learn how to use their powers, right? So they're kind of like a replacement for the original X-Men in a way. I think that's what it is.
Right.
And that's why they've got the same costumes. So, I mean, I don't know what they could have done differently to make them separate. Like, do you mean they shouldn't have wore the costumes? Is that what you mean, Kyle?
Well, no, I'm not even saying there's anything necessarily wrong with it. It's just like when you say, "Oh, what do you think of the new mutant?" It's like, well, they're like the old mutants, but slightly different. You know?
Okay.
Nothing really seems like. I'm not sure what you're asking me.
Well, I guess because I think they're like, I don't think they're generic. I think they're pretty cool. I think their characters are different.
They're not necessarily generic. It's just like none of their powers struck me like Wolverine or Storm or Cyclops. Nothing was like as cool as that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, you know, characters like that are 1 in a million. I do think these characters are great, but yeah, you're going to be hard pressed to find anyone as cool as like Wolverine or Storm or someone. But then again, Wolverine developed over many years and many different writers.
Right.
Like, if you were to go back and read his first appearance, he was just a Canadian guy with claws in his gloves. They weren't even part of his arms, you know? Like, they kind of just made it all up as they went along. So, yeah, characters like that take a long time to develop. Same thing with Deadpool. When he first appeared, he was just a generic, you know, bounty hunter. Like, he didn't develop the breaking the fourth wall or being funny until years later when Joe Kelly basically gave him his personality, you know? So, of course, I told Rob Liefeld that, and he blocked me on Facebook. But anyway.
Well, I think also by being X-Men, like I'm not trying to throw X-Men on the bus. I think they're cool. But, like, they all have basically the same origin. They're born with powers. They have to, know, they're ostracized. They have to learn to accept who they are. That inherently makes them less memorable, I think, than, say, Spider-Man or the Punisher or any other Hobgoblin. Anyone else we saw today, they have all these unique origins and backstories, right? That kind of that shape their personality and character as well. Whereas the mutants all have basically the same baggage, you know?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
With exceptions, obviously, someone like Rogue or someone who absorbs powers upon touch. She has a little different of a situation. I understand that, you know. But these guys, if they can blend in as regular teenagers and party, it's like it's not so bad.
So getting back to the actual story, I enjoyed it because the New Mutants were in it, and because, you know, I like seeing them hanging out, going to the arcade. The actual story itself, I'm sure you'll agree, Josh, we've seen it before. The ending is so abrupt; it doesn't really end. What did you think of the story?
I thought the story as a whole worked pretty well. I think that it was there were definitely parts that were a little bit confusing, again, with the whole mall situation or like the arcade when like that whole sequence. I don't think that it was written poorly. I just didn't understand exactly what was happening all the time. Again, that's definitely has to do with the layout of the panels and everything. Spider-Man definitely didn't need to be in this issue. I think it probably would have been stronger without him here, because we could focus on Cloak and Dagger interacting with the New Mutants rather than, you know, interacting with Spider-Man and then Spider-Man interacting with the New Mutants.
Right.
It just kind of felt a little bit disjointed there, but I think as a whole, it worked for me.
Yeah.
You know, again, there are like bits and pieces that could be improved, like what I had just mentioned, but overall, I thought it was a pretty good issue.
So you'd recommend it then? Yeah,
especially it being an annual. Normally, the annuals are just like
subpar.
Let's shove everybody into this issue as we, you know, as many characters as we can. You know, Captain America's in here, the Fantastic Four. We're gonna be X-Men. We're a Spider-Man. Like, they just throw everybody in. This felt like an actual real story that they had an idea for, and they put it to good use. They put the pages to good use. So yeah, I recommend this one.
Yeah, Kyle, what do you think?
I guess maybe I don't have the same like standard for what I should be looking for in a comic, because when I look at this, like comparing to like any other narrative, like a movie or a novel or something, right? It is so based on coincidence like every aspect of it. Like Spider-Man happens to be at the dock looking for Cloak and Dagger. He happens to stumble upon exactly where the teenagers are. Meanwhile, then he goes to look for Cloak and Dagger, and he happens to be by the church. I mean, Spider Sense as a whole seems like a plot device where it's like, we don't know how to get Spider-Man to the other characters, so he senses them.
Right.
So then he shows up. The New Mutants happen to be downtown that day, at the arcade. They happen to get chased out of the arcade into the exact guys who are testing drugs on people, and they happen to want mutants that day. They're at that point in their plan where they decide, we need mutants. Here's some mutants. We got them. Perfect. Because they're not even trying to kidnap mutants. They just kidnap these kids, and they find out they're mutants, I believe. And then they happen to run to the nearest church, which is the church where Cloak and Dagger are hanging out. Some of that's allowed. Like, obviously, you need some of that to make a story work.
Right.
Even when they leave, like how do they know where to find the Wolfsbane and Sunspot? Like, how do they know to go to that place?
Are you saying our standards are too low, and that's why we like this comic? Is that what you're saying? Is it possible?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying like because okay, I don't want to go dig up Quasar, but when we look at those Quasar comics, right? The one I remember was the dinosaur. And I have like 4 comics, so I have to compare to the other one I've read. In that one, it opened with Quasar and the Thing exploring the sewers because they had a lead that some like device was being developed there, right? Which then turned out to be some time device which sends them back to the past. But they had a reason to be together, a reason to be there, and they were looking for the Thing, which they were actually looking for these scientists. They had an idea where they would be. Of course, they found them, and then they got pulled into the adventure from there. And the whole issue was them trying to get out of this situation. So that worked for me. Whereas most of the comics we looked at today, this one being the worst, well, this and Jack of Hearts were both pretty bad for it. We're just so like, oh, well, thankfully Peter Parker came to school the exact same day that Jack of Hearts was there. To me, that's not good storytelling. That's like, like it could be a cool idea they're building to, but the way they get to those points isn't good.
No, I agree. I don't think Spider-Man fit into the story at any point really here. Again, he uses his spider senses to find everybody in this issue. I will say though, with the gang members finding the New Mutants, it makes sense that they would go to an arcade and try to kidnap people.
But I think it's debatable if those are even the gang members. I think they're chased out by hoodlums.
Right.
And they run because you see shadowy guys under the bridge after the fight. And I think those are the gang members who, again, happen to be there. And I could be wrong.
Well, I think the key thing I should point out is that 3 of the comics that you read this week were all written by Bill Mantlo. Right? Bill Mantlo wrote Marvel Team Up, Spectacular Spider-Man, and Marvel Team Up Annual. So it's possible this is just a Bill Mantlo problem that maybe I've never noticed, or maybe Josh has never noticed. But maybe his writing style is just coincidence-laden, which is definitely not, a strength, that's for sure.
Yeah. Like individual story beats I liked. I don't want to say it was awful. Like I enjoyed the things it was building to. I just didn't like how it got to those points. It didn't feel organic.
Right.
Like it's kind of like wherever this takes place. Is this New York still? I don't know. But anyway, it's wherever it takes place. It's like a very small town, I guess, because everyone's running and everyone.
Well, it's New York. It's definitely New York. But yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, like the some of the interactions between the characters, like when they all get to the church, I do like the kind of big misunderstanding part. Like I thought that was well done. And then I don't know if I like the evil versions of Sunspot and Wolfsbane, but then the way that Cloak and Dagger absorb it and then like merge to like use their relation their yin and yang or whatever to like dispel it. It's kind of a neat idea. Like the balance of them balances everything, right? And then, like you said, it ends on a really weird note. Even that piece of art's really weird looking. I don't even understand where they are.
Right. So, do you recommend it?
If it is, it's only like a mild recommendation. It's not. I think of today, the first and the third are the ones I'd recommend the strongest.
Right. Yeah, Amazing. Once again, no surprise. Amazing is my favorite. What's your favorite this week, Josh?
Yeah, it's definitely Amazing. Marvel Team Up is Marvel Team Up. I mean, it's always going to feel like the weird misjoint, like not coherent story because it's Spider-Man talking and hanging out with another hero, so you can get interested in that comic. It always feels like a commercial for another character.
Right.
So
that's why Spider-Man's here. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And I don't think that Marvel Team Up will ever be, unless Amazing Spider-Man and Spectacular really have awful issues, I don't think Marvel Team Up will ever be my favorite. Unless they really change that, and it's okay to have Spider-Man team up with a bunch of different heroes each issue if the story makes sense, if there's a reason for him to be there. But there never really is. He's always just kind of dropped into somebody else's story so that way we can see what's going on, and we're there because of Spider-Man. So sure, we'll hang out with Cloak and Dagger and these mutants for a little while. I'll read an issue with the Jack of Hearts.
Yeah.
if Spider-Man will be there, you know what I mean? It always feels like, they're tricking me into reading somebody else's comic.
Well, on that note, I want to point out that I've been going through the older episodes of Spider-Cast, and some of our early episodes were like 37 minutes long. They were like really short. So this has got to be a record here. We're at 1:50. This is one of the longest.
Yeah.
So we want to thank Kyle Van Dongen for joining us. We'd like to have you back again in the future. Hopefully, there'll be a dinosaur in the next one you read. We'll see.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. But yeah.
Dinosaurs help everything go down easier.
Yeah, that's right. But Josh, yeah, you can take it from here.
All right. We want to thank you guys for listening. It really helps when you leave a review over on Apple Podcasts, or you can drop us a tweet at HCT Spidercast. You can find us pretty much anywhere at Comic Syndicate. And yeah, we want to hear from you guys. So let's keep that conversation going.
That's right. So we do 3 to 4 Spider-Man comics every week. And so until next Monday, this has been Here Comes the Spidercast.
All right. See you then.